Bill, how are you today?
I'm fine, Linda. How are you today?
Well, I'm your technical expert.
Yeah.
So good luck with that.
Yeah, I can see things are going swimmingly. Well, I want to talk about, just for a little bit today, what's going on in the economy. There are two things. One is immediate and the other is long-term. First of all, there was a huge sell-off in tech stocks. Okay, that means they were sold at cheaper prices. And semiconductor and AI stocks led the collapse. Okay, this is what we've been telling you for weeks will happen. And the stock prices decline means the stock market goes down. That's bad for us who are dependent upon institutional investors. Institutional investors are seeking safer investments when the stock market prices of those things go down, and they're moving into healthcare, consumer staples, and I want to come back to that, and energy. What are consumer staples?
Toothpaste?
Yeah, right? Consumer staples are the things that every household must buy to function at a minimal level all the time. There may be a fair amount of luxury items within that, and they will be dispensed with.
Yes.
But there's just so much you can cut out of your regular budget. The energy prices, we know where that's coming from. Okay, and we'll get to that later. So, bond yields went up. That means that bonds were selling at a lower price. When this happens, when bond yields go up and the interest rate is the same, the prices of bonds goes down. That means investors are dumping bonds. All right, why would investors do that? Because they've lost faith that the American government can pay the bonds back, the deficit, and the interest, which must be paid every year. Now, this is talked about a lot in economics, and particularly in the bond market, where they are concerned that these big institutional investors of bonds will punish the government for allowing the deficit to go up and the national debt to go up. Now, we have talked many times about the fact that the United States government cannot be forced to default, that in fact it can pay off the national debt by printing dollars.
Yes.
If you don't trust us, Paul Krugman today explains this quite simply. He writes, "The truth is that even fiscally irresponsible nations very rarely have acute debt crises unless they borrow large amounts of money in foreign currency. Because countries that can borrow their own currency can't literally run out of it. They can print more as needed. So there is no situation under which the United States government can be forced to default because of the national debt or deficits, because they can always just print the money. The U.S. government is the maker and user of money. Okay. It's not scarce for them like it is for everyone else. Countries that don't have a sovereign currency, like Greece, can get in trouble because their debt's denominated in euros."
Oh, that's why they had so much trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to get the euros from the European Union, and they have to then pay the euros back.
Yeah.
They should have never given up their own currency because they gave up their ability both to ensure that they don't collapse financially and to operate an independent monetary policy, but that was the cost of getting into the European Union, and it's why the British didn't enter the monetary union when they were in the... Okay, now, realizing that this was a bit of a problem, our Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, decided to increase buyback of bonds to bring down bond yields and stabilize bond prices. The Treasury can always buy bonds. They sell bonds, they can buy bonds. So, due to the fact that these, institutional investors in bonds allowed the price to go down, the Treasury bought them back at a discount, which, by the way, eliminates them from the national debt.
That's right.
But more interestingly, the lowering of the debt a little, it also raises stock prices. So then the stock market went up, except for the NASDAQ, which is a little too tech heavy.
Okay. So this sounds like you're not stealing from Peter to pay Paul. You're allowing Peter to go do whatever he wants, and then you're buying it back at a lower price.
Right. And that assumes, on my part, that Bessent knows what he's doing. I mean, people at the Treasury are pretty much aware that, they can always get more money. They can always print it. Now, there are problems in the technicality of that because the Federal Reserve is separate from the Treasury.
Right.
So when the Federal Reserve buys bonds, by law, they're forced to go to the secondary market, which raises values in the bond market.
But the Treasury isn't bound by that.
Well, no, they should just go to the Treasury and get the bonds. Why do they buy them from other bondholders? Buy them from the Treasury directly. If they buy them from other bondholders, that means that there's two commissions being paid to bond vendors, which is what this is all about.
Right.
And it makes the whole transaction slower. So at the same time, you have, the Federal Reserve, for example, buying bonds, the Treasury may be selling them.
Yes, but why don't they just buy it from the Treasury? Is that illegal?
There's a law that prohibits it.
Oh, okay, that's right. All right, so I got that answer now. So, in other words, even though the news got excited, there's no reason to get excited because it turns out there's one person in the Trump administration who, even though he comes across as a Class A idiot, actually did a smart thing.
Yeah, I mean, even a broken clock's right twice a day. He was bound to get something right at some point. And, this whole bond market thing is really an obsession of the Federal Reserve as well. And it's like, okay, the bonds are cheap. This would be a good time to redeem them, when they aren't going to cost as much. So,
I see.
So it was a smart move. And all this happened very quickly because the news cycle just went crazy. Right?
Yes, it did.
Oh, my God, there's a bond sell-off.
Yes.
And, it's like, those guys do this pretty regularly when they're unhappy, and it caused the stock market to go down and all this stuff. And it's like, this turned out to be a big nothing. Now there's a real problem. A couple days ago, Richard Reich, I think it was talking about that the Trump economy isn't in recession. It's just flatlined.
Okay.
And that's because all these bad things are happening, but, prices are going up and oil prices are going up and, hasn't been a growth in jobs.
Correct.
Now, that means that wages are flat, but it also means another thing. This analysis has one fundamental flaw, and that is capitalism must grow. It can't stay flat very long. Now, the reason that it's flat is because we've taken so many people out of the labor force.
Yes.
That means we took out their production and we took out their salaries, and yet employment has remained the same. And we have inflation. So no, we're not just riding along. Working people are losing every day. Their real standard of living is going down every day.
Yes.
It's not staying the same because of this inflation. And folks, if you don't like inflation, you're going to hate deflation because that's what happens in a depression.
Okay.
So, this was sort of a nice, things aren't as bad as it could be. And the New York Times followed yesterday with 10 graphs that show that Trump's failed at everything he promised bigly in the economy. I mean, these graphs are so clear that this is a total economic screw up that it's undeniable. It's just undeniable. This is all connected to the Iran war.
Yes, absolutely.
And, Iran is now attacking ships in the Straits of Hormuz at will, with no one even attempting to stop them. The only U.S. response has been Trump, with his notorious Sharpie, labeling the Straits of Hormuz as new U.S. territory. But there's a much bigger story here, so why don't you talk about the USS Lincoln?
Yeah, and then we both need to talk about the problem of a president thinking we've won a war that we've lost.
Bigly.
Yeah, bigly. Well, I was going to do a deep dive into the scandal around the USS Abraham Lincoln, but everybody knows by now that the Hegseth and his sycophants and the president have all said, oh, it's fake news. It's not true. That's not what I want to deal with. I want to deal with how this got to be a news story, the sort of the cycle of news and how it works. And the first thing I want to say is this extraordinary communication between our soldiers, sailors, and Marines on the front lines, able to communicate instantly in real time with their loved ones back home. I mean, we got used to it in our previous forever wars, but it's really remarkable. It used to be a soldier could be hauled up for treason for just having a camera to take pictures. This was true of Germany in World War I. The need to keep information from the public was so strong, or to control it. But now, the men are communicating, and women are communicating with their families.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is, because that technology is available, when their loved ones do not communicate with them, they get very, very concerned. And that's what has been happening, is that the conditions aboard the USS Lincoln, and I think probably the other ships in that combat group, there have been long silences, and that's been of real concern to their families. So who broke this story that the conditions aboard the USS Lincoln were so horrendous? Two reporters, Natalie Oliverio, on August 11th in the Military Times, had the headline, "Multiple USS Abraham Lincoln sailors have tried to go overboard amid extended deployment, families say."
Now, the important thing to note about that is you just don't go swimming off an aircraft carrier. You're not going to survive it.
Yeah, well, the poor sailor who went overboard was in the ocean for an hour before they rescued him.
Yeah, they're lucky the aircraft carrier didn't just run him over.
Well, true. I mean, it's absolutely right. It's such a height. It should have killed him, and thank God it didn't. The other reporter is Allison Bath. She reported a similar story also on August 11th in Stars and Stripes under the headline, "USS Abraham Lincoln Families Press Navy Leaders Over Sailors' Mental Health." So what I want to start with is these are families.
Yep.
It's not our politicians. It's not any officers in the military who should be looking out for these people. It's families, and it's because they're getting information directly from the ship. So the reports came from an August 6th meeting in San Diego when Acting Secretary of the Navy Hung Cao, and I think Hung Cao would be don't you think Hung Cao is a great name for a, we have this new ice cream stand plus bar in our town where you can get alcoholic milkshakes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's actually an apple orchard that sells hard cider and then makes them into slushies in the summer.
Well, I do think...
Here, kids.
I think Hung Cao is a great name for a bar and, ice cream.
Here's another question that you're going to have to take out. How did Hegseth miss this guy? This is a minority who's an admiral.
True, but...
Or secretary of the...
Yeah, but you have to remember that he came in, he was appointed after Hegseth fired the actual secretary of the Navy. And Hung Cao is a sycophant. He's always telling Hegseth what a great guy he is. So,
oh, yeah, I think I read about this guy.
So try to think of him as sort of his Sancho Panza. If you must. I know I shouldn't have said that because you said people don't read books anymore.
Well, it is the white guy using the colonial to cover his ass,
Well,
as always.
precisely. What's new? Okay, so the meeting of Acting Secretary of the Navy Hung Kao met with the families of sailors and Marines who are aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. And he, along with other Navy leaders, had a scheduled meeting in San Diego, to discuss things that Navy people discuss. And the town hall meeting was part of that scheduled visit. There were 200 people in attendance, and the entire meeting was taken up with families raising these concerns. Particularly, some of them dealt with reports of attempted suicide, which had been circulating before this, but it wasn't until after the meeting that there were reports of multiple suicide attempts confirmed, and that they did emerge from this meeting. Families had also raised concerns about conditions aboard the carrier and previous issues of Stars and Stripes, but what's ever in Stars and Stripes or Military Times does not usually get picked up.
Yeah.
But this was.
What's also amazing that it got published in Stars and Stripes, though.
Yeah, although it's interesting. Stars and Stripes has been pretty clear about some of these issues.
Yeah.
But it is amazing. You wouldn't think it, but I wanted to talk for a moment about the specific shortages and other issues that are affecting the Marines and sailors that were voiced at the meeting. Now, you have to remember that there are 5,000 people on this ship. So that's, larger than the student body at this little college.
Yeah. And that's the crew of the ship. There's a whole carrier group that is with it at all times.
And also I'll get to this other problem in a minute, but here's what you have to imagine. You and as one of 5,000 people are experiencing. The first is food shortages. At some point in the meeting, a family member reported hearing from her loved one that he was eating half a cup of rice and 2 tortillas. That was his dinner. For very long periods, there was no hot water for showering. For weeks, there was no laundry service. Now, I want you to just think about yourself in this context. There were long lines for the ship's store, but there were no supplies like toothpaste, soap, deodorant. This is set against long hours of very dangerous duty with 12 to 16-hour shifts, no days off, and with the extended deployment, including on the flight deck. And there's a continuous need for flight operations, maintenance, reactor operations, navigation, weapons, engineering, intelligence, food service, and security, and they have to be attended to 24/7. So the morale has gone down because the water has often not been available. There has been contamination of the water, and there are plumbing problems like all the toilets being plugged. Think about that. They've had no leave for over 250 days. Mail and care packages that might have compensated for the lack of personal products have been lost. And the mental health has really been reflected in declining morale, a sailor going overboard, and other attempts. Well, the story that emerged from that meeting had legs. It was picked up and amplified in the legacy press, on television news organizations, and by online influencers. So I think it was the specificity of the families. It was sort of a personal angle on what's happening that caught the imagination of the press. Then it actually had some kind of influence. On August 12th, Senator Richard Blumenthal sought answers from the Pentagon on the conditions aboard the Abraham Lincoln. And on August 17th, the 2 senators from California and 4 members of Congress representing constituents in San Diego sent a letter to the Inspector General for the United States Department of Defense calling for an independent investigation into various allegations raised by the families of the Marines and sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. You can find this letter online. They specifically mentioned the things that the families are hearing about: food shortages, unsanitary conditions, lack of essential supplies, and they highlighted this by saying it's a jarring vulnerability in the necessary sustainment system supporting the strike group. Also, the reports of the deteriorating mental health are mentioned, with a lack of DoD responsiveness, and they wanted the Inspector General to report on why the replenishing of supplies has failed, how to improve the response to mental health conditions. They want the investigation extended to the other vessels in Carrier Strike Group 3. And as you know, Secretary of Navy and hair gel addict Pete Hegseth was called out for his, quote, inadequate explanations regarding the reported conditions, because he said the conditions were completely misrepresented. And what this letter is saying is, I think we've had enough of this.
Moreover, he said those who were making such claims and publishing them in the press, he questioned the patriotism of the reporters, calling them American haters. This coming from a warmonger and pathological liar.
Yeah, but he does use a lot of hair gel. So
I didn't say that part was wrong. It's just we had really good, nasty names for him this week, and it was a shame not to get them all in.
Yeah, I agree. The joint letter stressed the harm done to the readiness of the Pacific Fleet. Quote, the harmful consequences of the extension will continue after the USS Abraham Lincoln and the broader strike force group come home. The unusually long deployment period and intense combat operations will undoubtedly increase maintenance requirements, which will compromise readiness at a time when we need to be buttressing our presence in the Pacific, close quote. And they went on to say, quote, the San Diego military community is a linchpin of our nation's Pacific strategy, and it will take significant efforts to restore morale and capacity after the strike group comes back home, meaning those sailors are going to get out of the Navy as fast as they can.
Absolutely.
They're not going to be re-enlisting. Now, the story about why the supply chain broke down was first told by John Ismay, writing in the New York Times on August 14th. Now, he was a naval officer. He completed a 239-day deployment from 2009 to 2010 aboard the USS Nimitz, and he was also deployed to Diego Garcia in 2002 after the 9/11 attack. So he knows what he's talking about. He said that what happened is this: the Fleet Logistics Center at the American base in Bahrain was heavily damaged on the first day of the war with Iran. This is the main logistics hub for all the strike groups. Supplies are taken to the ships and put on the ships. This is called replenishment at sea. Perhaps the clearest description the Navy has ever offered.
I was going to say, that's a military term? Yeah. It actually makes sense.
Yes. The Navy had to relocate its supply hub to a British base on the island of Diego Garcia, which is south of the Maldives. That is 2,200 miles away from the 2 aircraft carrier strike groups. You might remember that on March 20th, Iran launched 2 intermediate-range missiles at Diego Garcia, which meant the missiles had to travel about 2,500 miles, and that caused quite a lot of concern that they could go that far. Now, the resupply ship from Diego Garcia takes between 4.5 and 6 days to get from the Oman Sea to Diego Garcia, plus turnaround time. So you do the math. Priority is given to aviation fuel and munitions. The hub at Bahrain, on the other hand, took maybe a day or two of travel each way. There's a much lower priority given to fresh food, repair parts, personal necessities, and mail. And at this time, the USS Lincoln has gone over 250 days at sea. Now, I would like to close with one rather amusing way that the news got out to the public. Natalie Oliviero, who was the one that broke this story in the Military Times, broke the story about the attack on Bahrain on August 18th to CBS Morning News. That is quite a few days after it was reported in the New York Times. It was reported in the Times on the 14th. She tells CBS Morning News on August 18th that the base in Bahrain where the fleet is resupplied was damaged earlier in the war. And one of the co-hosts of CBS Morning News said, I didn't know that. That's a very important story. And so the Barry Weiss destruction of CBS News continues. Yes. That was my deep dive into what happened with the USS Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln, and I would like to say this is a shame. There is absolutely outrageous.
Well, here's the thing. The U.S. Navy is increasingly seeing its capabilities and effectiveness eroded by this irresponsible war on Iran. Bombing people and property does not win wars. It is just large-scale terrorism of a particularly sadistic kind. But the broader problem here is Trump's ordering a reduction in the joint military exercises with South Korea a day or so ago makes the world a more dangerous place in and of itself. His suggestion that we should be dealing with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un sends a dangerous message to this lunatic in North Korea, indicating that he can act with impunity. This happens in the same week that announced he's sending 55,000 more troops to Russia to fight in the war in Ukraine. Apparently, the slaughter of the previously sent unprepared Korean troops who did not speak Russian by Ukraine did not give this great leader much pause. Now, the carrier group that is going to replace the Abraham Lincoln is being pulled from the east coast of Japan. It is our northwestern group in the Pacific, which has been there since the end of World War II. There will not be a carrier group in the Western Pacific.
That's right.
Because this ship has been deployed. The George Washington is leaving its post. This is a disaster for the role that the U.S. Navy has played in maintaining free movement in international waters since the end of World War II.
Yeah.
While China is systematically building its capacity to extend its power and its claims to territorial waters at the same time. So on that happy note, we had one listener who sent us our very first comment.
Yes.
It was very nice, and we will write you a letter soon.
Well, what did it say?
It said we're doing a good job and they enjoy the podcast.
Okay, well, there you go.
Actually, there were 35 that said, well, you guys just shut the fuck up. But we got a nice one, too.
No, there weren't.
No, there weren't any like that.
Well, I wanted to, before we close, give a quick pat on my own back to the premise that I floated last time, which is that Donald Trump has been kicked to the curb, okay? And the reason I wanted to say something about that is that NPR did something pretty remarkable, and I think one of the reasons they could do it is that the government is no longer funding them. So they're kind of loose. They've been let loose.
No one is so free as one who has nothing to lose.
Exactly. So NPR interviewed a leader of the hardliners in Iran to ask, gosh, what's your view on the news? Now, you tell me, when we've been at war before and interviewed the leader of the other side, I don't think it's something we normally do.
No, that's actually pretty cool. I mean, I imagine they were pretty forthright about what they were doing.
Yeah, I think that it was very interesting that they got the interview. So they were interviewing Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and UN Ambassador Majid Takht Ravanchi. What a name. It sounds French. And what I appreciated about the takeaway that they offered was, look, we just have to keep this going until you get a different president. And that's what we're going to do. I mean, talk about confirming, yeah, well, we've kicked him to the curb, and you people are going to be paying for this war until we get somebody serious in. Breathtaking.
Well, it's interesting that it has been revealed from multiple sources that there is currently no contact or conversation going on. And do you know whether Trump has bothered to inform Marco Rubio that we're at war with Iran? You would think our diplomatic initiatives would be coming from there, though Trump often uses members of his family. You know, I think Jared got kicked to the curb when, they didn't want to take a Trump hotel in Tehran.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you something. Jared Kushner is back. He's in Israel. They're discussing Gaza. Well, I just quickly, the thing I can say about that is it seems to me that what has evolved with this war undercuts J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Because they can't run on President Trump's record. And yet, they have to. Because they were the enablers for it, or they are the enablers for it.
Yeah, the American public will hold them accountable. They are the ones who could have said, don't do this.
Yes.
And, of course, they'd have been fired, but then they could run for president.
Yes, or they could have just said, you shouldn't do this, and quit. I mean, they could have shown some... maybe they needed those testosterone shots that Hegseth talks about.
Hegseth better go do an oral exam on those guys to check their testosterone levels.
Well, that's a good idea.
God, what a world.
Well, in just the final few minutes before we have to go, I wanted to say how very devastating it was this week that a young scholar who was targeted, the first person of color named to a chair in Cambridge, was found dead in his apartment. And this, of course, began when he was accused, evidently falsely or incorrectly, of plagiarism. And then it escalated beyond that to a complete press frenzy in the UK that was outrageous, absolutely outrageous. Part of what was behind this is the same right-wing frothing at the mouth about wokeness and the implication that if you hire somebody of color, they're not really qualified. You're just hiring them to fill out your profile so you look more diverse. This was outrageous. It was sickening. And I honestly don't know how either Cambridge or the press can get over this one.
Me either.
I mean, I heard one report, or I read one report, that some reporters went to the school where Arday used to go and interviewed two of his former classmates, who are now, of course, adults, and they said, oh, no, he talked all the time. where he said he couldn't really talk until he was 9 or 10 years old. And then they talked to a special ed teacher, what we would call a special ed teacher here, and she said, no, I never heard him speak. What are they thinking? If they want to find out if he was limited by autism, get the medical records.
Yeah.
Don't interview two people who knew him how many decades ago? It's outrageous. And he finally said he couldn't take the pressure. So, again...
That was with his resignation, and the pressure didn't stop after
absolutely. That. And so this ability, this devastating ability to point to the color of somebody's skin and declare what they embody universally is so outrageous and deadly. And so my heart goes out to his family and to everybody associated with him and with these ridiculous, ridiculous decisions. All right, everybody. We hope to have some better news next time, but, don't necessarily hold your breath. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.